Now on Mississippi Insight.
I'm committed that Walker's legacy is not what happened in life. His legacy is going to be the kids that are going to get to live.
A teenager's life cut short by an online sextortion scam. Now his family is turning heartbreak into a mission to save other children. Also, the Democratic contender for the U.S. Senate in 2026 ruffles feathers with his debut. We'll hear from District Attorney Scott Colom. And former Governor Haley Barbour recalls the Katrina disaster and how Mississippi got back on its feet. That's all ahead this week on Mississippi Insight. I'm Melanie Christopher in this week for Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us for this September 7th edition of Insight. We're taking a look in depth at how a Starkville family's worst nightmare has become their life's mission. 16-year-old Walker Montgomery took his own life after falling victim to an online sextortion scam. Now, his father is pleading with parents to protect their children, and lawmakers are fighting to hold social media companies accountable.
He told the person, said, "I'm going to kill myself." And the person's response was, "Go ahead, because you're already dead anyway."
On November 30th, 2022, the Montgomery family's day looked like so many others. Walker went hunting with his dad, shared dinner and prayers with his mom. A 16-year-old with dreams, friends, and a family that loved him. But by dawn, his life was gone.
Walker went to bed perfectly normal. He had what every 16-year-old kid would dream of having as far as his friends and family and everything else. And it's hard to imagine that you can go to bed with your kids in that situation and they're not with you the next day.
In the middle of the night, Walker was targeted by an online predator.
And about midnight, Walker was contacted for someone pretending to be a young girl in the area. The conversation started with just, "Hey, what's up? You know, I'm friends with another friend on Instagram," and just building credibility.
The scammer convinced him to participate in a sexual encounter and recorded it from the other end.
And as soon as that was over, the person went back to Walker and said, "Hey, we have this video and we're going to send it to all of your friends and family if you don't pay us $1,000. Walker panicked.
Walker told them he didn't have the money and begged them not to send the video.
Finally, the person started sending Walker screenshots of the video being sent out. It actually wasn't being sent out, but it showed him. It looked like the person was sending the videos out to people in his Instagram feed, that he was friends with. And of course, he's begging them to stop. And finally, they get to Walker's mom, and he told the person, said, "I'm going to kill myself." And the person's response was, "Go ahead, because you're already dead anyway if you don't send us the money." At some point in the morning, it was within 3 or 4 hours of first contact, Walker went into my safe and got a handgun and took his own life.
Walker attended Starkville Academy, played football, had lots of friends, was active in his church, and beloved by all. Brian says online predators typically target teens who are athletes and popular with classmates like Walker.
It's more so relative to a kid's perspective on his surroundings, meaning that socially, if it looks like he has more to lose, athletes are very high on that list because they're popular, a lot of people know them, they're connected to a lot of people.
For Brian Montgomery, the pain is still unbearable, but he's determined his son's story will not end with tragedy.
I'm committed that Walker's legacy is not what happened that night. His legacy is going to be the kids that are going to get to live.
That legacy is now law. The Walker-Montgomery Protecting Children Online Act requires age verification and parental consent for minors on social media. Guardrails to slow down predators hiding behind fake accounts. Mississippi Representative Fabian Nelson co-authored House Bill 1126.
What this bill does is it requires our social media platforms to verify the age of users that are to make sure that minors under the age of 18 are not using the services without parental consent.
Nelson says the bill is personal for him as a lawmaker and as a father.
As a father, I know how it is. Kids get on social media. There's a lot of bullying that goes on social media. In Walker's case, he didn't feel comfortable talking to his parents. I approached it as being a parent and thinking about the other parents and thinking about how social media has really hurt so many of our teenagers.
Nelson says parents must realize what's at stake. Online threats don't just come from bullies at school. They can come from continents away. The people who targeted Walker were found to be in Nigeria. The law still faces pushback from tech companies. Brian says with age verification, these companies will likely lose ad revenue.
It is a revenue-driven perspective from tech, and they're very good at cloaking that into a First Amendment, issue, but it's really about the dollars. My argument was always, look, we got to place a stake in the sand somewhere and say, hey, this is where we're going to fight. We're going to fight this hill. And fortunately, Mississippi said, you know what, we're with you.
Brian says Walker showed no signs of despair before that night. He was loved, supported, surrounded by friends, and still, it wasn't enough to shield him from the pressure of one cruel message.
We were living life, everything was going great, and we wake up one day and that life will never be the same.
For the Montgomerys, telling their story is not only about healing, it's about warning. They know no law will bring Walker back, but they hope sharing his story will spare other families from waking up to the same nightmare.
His nickname was Hammer, so he got that when he was young, but that's all his friends know him as Hammer. But Walker was one of the most kind-hearted, loving people that you would ever meet. He loved to hunt, he loved farm equipment, and he loved football, and he loved his family. As parents, we've got to do our part, and I can look back on things that I wish I'd have done better and wish I'd have known that I didn't know, but it wasn't supposed to be Walker. The Walker-Montgomery Protecting Children Online Act is now law in Mississippi. Even though it still faces legal challenges, Brian Montgomery and lawmakers like Fabian Nelson believe the mission is clear: protect our kids no matter the cost. We'll be right back. A lot of Mississippians may be learning the name of Scott Colom this month, the district attorney for the 16th Judicial District in Northeast Mississippi, missed a whole word. 3, 2, 1. A lot of Mississippians may be learning the name of Scott Colom this month. The district attorney for the 16th Judicial District in Northeast Mississippi is running for U.S. Senate on the Democratic ticket, and his recent TikTok video depicting a supposed phone call with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith prompted angry Republicans to call for a federal criminal probe. 12 News political reporter Cameron Smith spoke with Colom Friday afternoon.
Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate Scott Colom recently announced plans to challenge Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith.
I know that Mississippi needs a senator that's going to put us above D.C. politics.
Colom says he's served as a prosecutor for over 10 years with a 94% conviction rate. He tells us his focus as a senator would include lowering the price of goods, eliminating the federal income tax for teachers and cops, and increasing wages for Mississippians.
I'm going to put the pocketbooks of everyday Mississippians above anything else.
Mississippi Democratic Party Chairman Chuck Taylor notes there's room for growth in the areas Colom wants to prioritize. Taylor says whether he's speaking as the state party chair or as a state lawmaker,
we all agree on one thing, is that we need to increase wages and opportunities for all Mississippians here.
And Colom criticized Senator Hyde-Smith for voting to cut taxes for those making over $600,000 a year.
She paid for those tax cuts by putting over 140,000 Mississippians at risk of losing their health care and at least 8 hospitals at risk of closing. So when I'm elected to the United States Senate, I'm going to repeal those health care cuts. I'm going to save our hospitals.
Colom is also receiving pushback for a parody video he posted on social media. Thursday, the Mississippi GOP said they're calling for an investigation because they claim the video impersonates Hyde-Smith.
Everybody knows it's a joke. She never talks to us. And, to me, it's a strong sign that the Mississippi Republican Party knows she has a record that they cannot defend.
In Jackson, Cameron Smith, 12 News.
We'll hear from Haley Barbour after a short break. It's Mississippi Insight, only on 12 News. We heard from former Governor Haley Barbour in our live Katrina anniversary special last week. He spoke as Mississippians marked the 20th anniversary of the hurricane strike on the Gulf Coast. Barbour was instrumental in responding to the disaster and bringing in millions in federal recovery funds. Here's more of my conversation with former Governor Haley Barbour.
Well, you know, we just dealt with it. And one of the things I talk about in my book, make decisions. If you're the leader, you got to make decisions. And if you make decisions, make enough of them, you're going to make some bad ones. And don't be afraid to say, we're going to change this because we've got a better way than we've been doing it. It's a lot of politicians don't like to do that, but you owe it to people to tell them the truth and to give them the best shot you can. And the federal government, you know, they had some troubles, but they did so much more right than wrong. FEMA was fabulous to us, and the federal government gave us $25.5 billion to the state of Mississippi. Now, some of that went to families for housing and to businesses and all that. But what an enormous amount of money. And Democrats in Congress voted for us. Republicans in Congress voted for us because, in my mind, they knew their constituents back in Massachusetts or Michigan or Montana. They knew those people wanted government to help us. They thought we deserved it. In fact, I think Katrina did more to improve Mississippi's image in the United States and the world more than anything else in my lifetime.
That is a very beautiful statement, actually, that you think it just, you know, it put us on the map for sure, but the way the response was so good. And you were at the helm. I mean, and let us not forget the most wonderful woman, Marcia Barbour, your wife, who I remember talking to those highway patrol guys that would take her around, and they said, oh my gosh, we'd just be driving and she'd say, stop right now, stop. And they popped the trunk, out came the diapers and the formula and everything. She was just amazing.
Well, as I say in the book, if you have to go through something like this, having a strong partner who is totally engaged is indispensable. And that's where it was with Marcia. Marcia went to the coast 70 of the first 90 days after the storm.
She was there before you, wasn't she?
She went down before Katrina came fully ashore, because she had gone down to Camp Shelby, where we had pre-positioned a bunch of National Guard and Highway Patrol to thank them, to just go and thank them for, that. Well, she couldn't get back to Jackson because the storm was so bad. And so she went out and she was in the area on the beach before I could get there, because you obviously couldn't fly an airplane in 150-mile-an-hour winds.
I think my favorite quote that you ever told me, and I think we talked about this maybe the first time around when in doing an anniversary piece, you said, of course, we were delighted that you did have President George Bush on speed dial because of all your wonderful work that you've done in Washington and those connections, but he called you and he said, Haley, do you know where Collins, Mississippi is? And as I remember, you said, "Of course I do. I'm the governor. I know where Collins is."
George, you've been governor. You know I know where Collins is. Why? Why do you need to know about Collins? It's a great story.
Oh, it's a fabulous story. I have told it so many times, but who knew how important that area was to other parts of the country? So this didn't just affect us, it had the potential to really shut down other parts of the United States.
The whole East Coast. I mean, they were getting a huge percentage of their petroleum products were coming and through two pipelines, and those two pipelines crossed in Collins, and the electricity was off in Collins, so the pipeline shut down. And I called the president of Mississippi Power, wonderful president of Mississippi Power. And he said, "Haley, I don't think it's in our service area, but I hear the problem. We'll go fix it." And they fixed it within 24 hours
I know.
to get the electrician. And Anthony Topazzi will always be a hero in my life for that. And for the second thing he did during the storm, he got on TV and said, "We will have electricity to every person in Mississippi Power service area who can receive electricity," because lots of houses, as you remember the term, slabbed. It
Yes, I do.
wasn't anything left of the house but the slab, but you couldn't get to those. And he said, "And we're going to do it by September the 11th, a very important date." And they did it by September 10th, and Entergy did it by September 11th.
The response was amazing. I mean, really, it really was. Now, I understand this morning you and Mrs. Barbour took a helicopter tour. Now, when you think back of when you took a helicopter tour back then too, what's the difference? What do you see now?
Well, the helicopter tour on the day after Katrina, August 30th in 2005, was so unbelievable. I mean, it looked like the hand of God had wiped away the coast not from the beach to north of the interstate in some places. And one of your colleagues, Bert Case, asked me after we got back down on the ground, we had 3 helicopters and we let the press have one of the 3. And Bert said, "What's your biggest fear, Governor?" And I said, "How many bodies we're going to find under all that debris?" Because the debris, Melanie, in places was 40 feet deep. Everywhere it was 2 or 4 or 6 feet deep. And it took us 47 million tons of debris. That's how much it took us to clear the debris away. 47 million tons. And the government gave us $717 million to pay for that. But today is reminds me of all the good things that happened. The Barksdale Commission and their great ideas that they came up with. The legislature and how the legislature, many of whom had not been my biggest allies, like Billy McCoy, and Billy was a nice man, but he and I just
clashed.
And they did what Billy McCoy did, one of the most courageous things I've ever seen anybody do in politics. The Senate wasn't going to take up the bill until the House took up the bill for what is our plan, final version of the plan. And Billy was against gaming. He always voted against gaming. He thought his constituents didn't want gaming. And the gaming bill was what needed to be done for us to get a piece of legislation. And Billy McCoy told the House, we're going to vote on gaming, and you vote however you want to. Billy voted against it, but it passed by quite a margin. And Billy McCoy personally was the guy who made that happen. And to see legislators put the good of the state in front of their constituents, there's a lot to be said for that. And I'll always admire Billy McCoy for doing it.
If you have comments or questions about today's show or a suggestion for an interview or segment, just drop us a line. Email our producers. The address is news@wjtv.com. And Byron Brown returns next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Melanie Christopher. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.